Good morning, everyone. Thank you to those that have joined us promptly. We're just waiting for a few more to join because we've had quite a few registered. So while we wait, please do take the time to introduce yourself in the chat. Would love to know who you are and what organisation you are from. So please do say.
Numbers slowly trickling up.
Yeah. Who wants to go first? They will get a shout out. Yeah, please do not be shy.
Maybe another 2 minutes, do you think, Georgina? And then we'll.
Yeah, we can start. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
For those of the, sorry for the people that joined already, you will get tired of this announcement, but just to say welcome. We will be starting in a minute, but before we do, please do take the time to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know, yeah, who is in the audience today. So your name and yeah, what organisation you are from. Oh, great. Thank you, Nigel, for kicking us off. Excellent. Welcome. We'll start in a minute's time. Excellent. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Tim.
Okay.
I think, yeah, we are ready to kick off as we have lots to cover today. So thank you again, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on turning devolution into digital transformation. My name is Georgina Maratheftis, and I'm the Associate Director for Local Public Services here at techUK. And I'm really delighted to be hosting today's webinar in partnership with Juniper Networks. And what a timely event it is, especially as councils are putting through their proposals as we speak. So, as the UK government advances council devolution and the shift towards unitary authorities, local government really do find themselves at a moment of profound change. And now with this change, there may be lots of concerns and challenges around, what does this mean for the future of the IT estate? Considerations around rationalisation, digital maturity, and the future of IT procurements. There are also a lot of positives that come with this. Devolution and local government reorganisation offers a local government the opportunity to enhance a digital maturity as well as create smarter organisations that deliver better public services ultimately for the benefit of citizens. And that is what is most important. So this really is a once in a generation opportunity. And again, that's why I'm delighted techUK is hosting this webinar in partnership with Juniper Networks. So today we hope to put the spotlight on what can be done, sharing best practice to support councils on this pivotal journey to get the foundations right. A chance to rethink and reset for the future of local government. We have a great set of speakers, and I'm now delighted to hand over to one of them, Gersh from Juniper Networks, who will introduce herself and the other speakers. Over to you, Gersh.
Thanks. So, morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gershigan, and I'm an account manager here at Juniper Networks, now HP Juniper Networking. And we really wanted to talk about kind of what's happening in local government at the moment. We're hearing local government reorganization, English devolution, unification, aggregation, disaggregation. What does it all mean, and what should we be doing? So Juniper is a global leader in networking and helps organizations build reliable, future-ready digital infrastructures. And as Georgina said, we think this is a really good time to really talk about how these changes can, in fact, accelerate digital transformation goals. With us today, we've got two fantastic speakers. And so perhaps, Sherrill, you can start by introducing yourself.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Gersh. So I'm Sherrill Holder. I'm the Assistant Director of Digital and ICT at Gloucestershire County Council.
Fantastic. And Dave.
Yep, good morning, everyone. So I'm Dave Seifleet. I'm a Senior Technical Advisor at Local Government Association, where I'm part of our Cyber, Digital and Technology team.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Excited to see where this conversation takes us today. So to set the scene for the rough 1 hour that we have, we're going to keep it really conversational. We're going to be asking our panelists some questions, get their views on, how we should be looking at all the changes that are happening at the moment. And then in the last 10 minutes, you guys will get a chance to ask some questions as well. So maybe throughout the session today, if you want to pop any questions that you have in the chat, we'll come in the last 10 minutes, we'll try and answer as many of them as possible. So I want to set the scene. I obviously mentioned a lot of buzzwords in the beginning, but really let's talk about what is the difference between reorganization and devolution. So local government reorganisation is referring to the structural reshaping of local councils. So typically moving from a two-tier system where you've got county councils and then you've got district councils to unitary authorities. They're going to be handling all of the services. This could be everything from simplifying governance to improving service delivery and then creating a larger, more capable authority with a population of over 500,000. Devolution is about transferring those powers and those responsibilities from central government down to local government. So this means they can make decisions on transport, infrastructure, planning, skills, tailoring those services then to the local needs and local priorities, and also then inform making strategic partnerships as well. So it's important to kind of know the difference between the two and how the two are going to come together. I guess with that, it would be really good to know where everyone in the audience is in their journey at the moment. So where are you in your disaggregation journey at the moment? And what are you hoping to get out of the webinar today? It'll be good to kind of just see where you all are. As we wait for those answers to come in, Sherrill, I might ask you, so where is Gloucestershire in their aggregation or disaggregation journey at the moment?
Thanks, Gersh. So in Gloucestershire, we are a two-tier authority at the moment, and we're in wave 2. So we didn't get onto the fast track programme to be one of the first adopters of unification or devolution. So the stage where we're at is we're currently pulling together the business cases to put forward to central government. They have to be submitted in November. Within Gloucestershire, we've got a few different options on the table that are being worked through before we actually decide which one. And we actually think there'll be a number of business cases that will actually go forward to central government. And then we expect by the end of August next year to have a mandate from central government about which business case they actually want us to proposal they want us to go forward with. So it's quite difficult at the moment because we can't do a lot of planning around this is what we're aiming for because we've got so many different options on the table. So currently we're just really focusing on what we can do, what kind of information can we pull together at the minute.
Right. Okay. So you're pulling all the information together, but given you don't know the outcome, what could we do? What are you doing specifically to kind of work towards the outcome?
So a big thing for us is around opening up those communication channels with our district and borough partners who are also obviously going to be affected in this. Their organisations are going to change. That's the one thing we do know. So we're working together to pull together that architecture, the information, the data sharing agreements, who's got what applications, who's, what networks, what contracts have we got in place. So we're pulling all of that together so that we can get that picture of where we are today, what's the as is.
Okay.
And then go on, sorry.
Go on, no.
And so from that, we can then look at contract end dates. We can look at who's going to be doing, because the timescale for us is years. So before our new organisation or organisations, because it might be 2 unitaries, take effect, we're looking at sort of 3 years, 4 years away. So it's looking at what procurements do we have to do in that process, or where could we start joining up and doing some procurements together anyway, regardless of what's going to happen in the future or what that future organisation might look like, or actually which procurements should we be saying don't do that now, wait, see if you can do a temporary extension rather than do that procurement, or is there some joint procurements we can do and we can say, right, we'll end up with this in the future because we're all in agreement now. We're very lucky in Gloucestershire, I think, because we have got that open communication with our district and our boroughs, and we are being really transparent with each other and sharing information and sharing the learning. You know, for example, as the director for a county council, we're not used to doing so much of that public facing interaction that the district and the boroughs are. You know, we don't do housing benefit, etc. And so we've got to learn how to do that really enhanced customer experience piece.
It's really interesting. Dave, are you seeing a similar response or a similar approach from some of the councils that you work with?
It's really, really interesting here, since hearing Sherrill talking about the communication required between this, because that's one of the core themes that runs through this. So what I see is quite a varied picture. I mean, on one hand, you've got this kind of need to agree, which involves some of the politics as well, good, viable structures, balancing, you know, your democracy with opportunities for effective working. That's big, that's complex, that takes time to work through, and conversations and discussions around that. At the same time, every organization subject to this, they'd be doing this to an extent anyway, but this catalyzes it and changes it. They're reviewing where they stand, they're envisioning what their future needs are. What I certainly see is an increased focus on data and information needs. There's a lot of internal reflection going, you know, what do we have? What systems do we have? Exactly as Sherrill says, you know, what are the contracts that are in place? How do we work with those? You know, how do those need to flex over time? What data do we have? And how can we actually work together to try and align an approach to take us through this process? Cheryl mentioned around the time scale here. Now, there are things that need to be done at different stages, but ultimately this is trying to review, build a longer term vision for digital, supported by policies, approach to how data is handled, communicated effectively. So I guess it's a complex picture, and there are risks within it. What I typically see is organizations who are embracing that and seeing that to an extent as a challenge. So using it to understand what they've got now, looking at an approach to good closer working. I mean, there isn't really an alternative to doing that. You know, LGR, devolution, aggregation, disaggregation are happening. They will go beyond day one. So this kind of focus on long-term goals, where do we ultimately want to be, working backwards from that, is really, really important. And I do generally see that. Where it gets difficult is where there isn't necessarily the best communication between organizations, and that can become a real challenge.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is it's not too late to be planning. If anything, right now is the time to be planning, find that goal and then work backwards. Okay, nice. Do we have responses in the chat from where everyone is in their journey at the moment, Georgina?
I think everyone's in listening mode. It seems like, and I think, as you say, because people, I think, just wanting to gather the insight, but have asked as well if any of our members are, you know, happy to share what they're seeing from their council partners. But no, it looks like everyone is in listening mode. So I'll hand back to you guys.
No worries. All right. I guess from my perspective, and I know we've just had a look at where everyone is in their journey and what they should be doing. From a Juniper perspective, we've often seen that councils want to act, but just don't know where to start. And so what I always say is with Juniper, you don't necessarily have to rip and replace your existing network. You know, we talk a lot about citizen experience, but we also want that same experience to be for networking teams and IT teams. So if we take the Mist platform, for example, it's an AI-driven platform. It's going to give you a single view across wired, wireless, security, and even when there's a different mix of vendors. So what that means is councils can unify at their own pace. You can plan properly, you can align with contract start and end dates, and you can still benefit from automation and insights from the get-go. If I give you an example of a local council, London Borough of Brent, they've deployed Juniper across multiple sites, and they're still doing that. and they've saved £400,000 annually in operational costs. Not my words, theirs. And I think that in itself is so powerful that, you know, you're able to really take your time with things. You're able to transform, you're able to do it at your own pace, and you can expect long-term savings. So from kind of the Juniper perspective, that's the way that I would look at it in the journey. Sherrill, would you say that this is being seen as a real chance to modernize, or is this being seen as more of a cost-cutting project, essentially?
So I think if we look at why central government came up with this, it's got to be around the cost savings. I mean, it's some councils are already unitary councils. That decision was made many years ago, and that was around actually being able to save money. So underlying, it's got to have that. However, I think now we're in a space where, especially the professionals within the IT sector and public sector, see this as an opportunity. It's the opportunity of a generation to actually do something different. And I think if you work for a council that has got that vision and that ambition to really make a difference, and we have to, because budgets are reducing and demand is increasing, and technology is the enabler to us being able to do things more efficiently, more quickly, bringing those data sets together so we can make informed decisions, so that we can do more for less. So I think, you know, I'm very fortunate, I think, in the council that I work for, that we are looking at this. We've already set out within the digital and ICT space what our vision and our ambition for this is. And we're very lucky that all of the exec leaders from the different councils that are involved with this have signed up in principle to that vision, which is we want to do something, we want to be brave and bold. Equally, we need to be safe and secure. We need to make sure that we've got a minimum viable product in place for day one of that new organisation or new organisations. But rather than waiting, so we're not waiting for the decision, we're trying to look at, and I've stolen this off a colleague, not from here, from Essex, who came up with you need to look at what you can do now, what you can do next, and what you have to leave till later. And that's really pushing yourself, really push those boundaries, push your leadership. You know, they are going to go, well, we can't possibly do that. We're just going to continue. I'll give an example here of keeping all of the different payroll systems we've got in place for day one. And, you know, we need to make sure everybody can still get paid. And let's just carry on the way we do. Well, actually, we've got 3 years. So do we have to limit ourselves, or can we look at what we can do? That might be a bit different to get something ready for day one. And for me, it is around working with suppliers like yourselves and others to understand what we've got and what are the opportunities, and for us to be informed, to be able to go back to our leadership groups and go, you haven't just got one choice. These are the choices, these are the risks, these are the benefits, and actually what outweighs the benefit. But the big thing that we've done is we're trying to make it really clear to our leadership that, yeah, there may be savings to be made, but they are way down the line when it comes to technology. And actually, initially, you might end up actually having to pay more upfront in this space than getting those benefits. You're not going to get day one benefits.
Yeah. Dave, I saw you nodding throughout. What's your take on this? Are you seeing and kind of implementing similar?
I'm so tempted to say what Sherrill just said, but I won't. I'll do myself more grace than that. I mean, it's interesting the way, the question in itself, is it cost cutting or a chance to modernize? We do love to polarize as human beings, don't we? But I think realistically, we tend to hold these multiple conflicting viewpoints, and certainly, ultimately there are opportunities here for cost savings, there are opportunities for efficiencies, but in the short term what this really requires is good effective use of resources, a better understanding of those resources, and agreements on what to invest on in different stages of this process to make real change that ultimately will help take organizations forward. I mean, what I see, and I think it backs up, Sherrill, what you were saying to an extent, is there's a lot more good, positive focus, on what information sits within organizations, how that information might need to flow to deliver good, more shared services. And when I see that backed up by clear leadership, that starts to translate into a proper discussion, vision, plans for service redesign, transformation, on that staged basis that we were talking about. And where those real conversations are happening, this is starting to bear fruit, and it's actually quite empowering, especially when you consider that councils come in different shapes and sizes within the current structure. We're talking about county and district in this particular case. Some of those councils are actually quite small, but that doesn't mean that they lack knowledge, understanding, or ambition of what they could do. And on the scale that they exist at, in some cases, it's very, very difficult to actually deliver some of those things. That might involve big things like networking. It might involve changes linking up particular systems working in different ways. If those organizations are coming together and they're building that positive vision, it can be really, really enabling for things to be done around service transformation and evolution that couldn't have been done on those individual scales. So, that's really positive. I guess the only other thing I'd add at the end of that is, I'm an employee in an organization. Everyone within a council is an employee with an organization. Those organizations are going to change. And the discussion that's had within the organization on what this means and what staff hear about that is ultimately vitally important in itself. Because if they are portraying a good vision through the organization to people who, we all fear change to an extent. It's a natural human thing to do that. We try and embrace it, but there's that fear that organizational leadership can portray that in a way that brings people on board, tries to get their ideas out of them. If it's seen solely as a cost-cutting measure, that's terrifying.
Yeah. What would you say to someone that is in an organization and doesn't necessarily think that leadership are looking at it as a transformation opportunity? How should one influence leadership to see it in that way?
I mean, it's really difficult, isn't it? Sorry, I've jumped in, Dave.
Yes, go for it, Sherrill, please.
I'll go for it and then you can add to it. I think it is really difficult depending on where you sit within that organisation. And that's where I think we are reliant on organisations like the Government Association and others that can help influence senior leaders when they're actually interacting with them and giving them the advice and guidance or lessons learned from organisations that have been through this before us. Myself, obviously, I'm in a senior leadership position, so that means I have a bit more of a easy way to influence the senior execs to me within my organisation and the others, and that's through making sure I'm keeping them updated on, different events like today, where hopefully, through the chat, we might learn something from others, or, conversations. I learned so much. I actually spent some time with Dave doing a peer review for another council and learnt so much from Dave and colleagues through that actual experience that I could bring back and share with my organisation. And it is around challenging. So, you need to challenge, but challenge with the facts, challenge with the evidence, give them the options. And I think that's key. The big thing that I've learned, even in a senior leadership, even if we weren't talking about this, if we were just talking about in general, how do you influence those more senior to yourself? It's around giving them the information and allowing them to come to their own conclusion and not actually being biased in those options that you give them. If you give them the facts, you give them the risks, you give them the benefits, then hopefully they will come to the same conclusions that you would come to, because you let the data inform the decision. However, we do live in a political organisation, so we do know that sometimes the politics do end up playing more of a part than actually the data may suggest. So you have to also accept that not all decisions are going to go the way that you want them, and you've got to be pragmatic about that, and you've got to not let that demotivate you. So, you know, I've got this, for me, personal vision and ambition that in Gloucestershire this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to us. But I've also got to counter that with the fact that that vision that I've got isn't probably going to materialize in quite the way that I want it, and there's going to be some compromise along the route, and I'll have to, you know, deal with that and find colleagues that I can share my frustrations with, and they can go, there, it's fine, you'll get over it. But yeah, so I think that's where I think, and you've just got to keep informed and keep going, keep trying to get heard. And I do, you know, when I've been on an event, I just email my chief exec, my deputy chief exec, my boss, and I email and went, I've learnt this and so said this, so they don't think it's just me, they can see that it's coming from others' experience. So Dave, sorry I cut in, hand back over to you.
It's probably me. I normally do that by accident anyway. I mean, with these sort of questions about sort of, you know, leadership, communicating with them, influencing them, it really all comes down to who the you is. And, you know, people in different parts of the organization have a role to play. I mean, just as a general member of staff in all these cases, it's worth just challenging the question with, you know, what is going on with this? What is actually happening? Because in some organizations, you know, the communications can be great. In some, it's not as good as it could be. And sometimes little spurs like that, asking the question, helps things improve. But if I look at it from a kind of digital technology side, you know, it's very much what Sherrill was talking about, which is building a dialogue in this space. You know, as a human being, you know, regardless of my experience, my leadership skills, whatever, when I'm coming under a certain amount of pressure to get certain things done, the vision, the focus will naturally narrow. That's just what we do. You know, if there's a lion running towards you, you're probably either going to be looking at it directly, trying to work out what it's doing, or running away. The reality is the focus narrows, and it's about, as a good colleague on the digital side, making sure that that focus goes wide so that people are aware of what is happening in other places, what can be done, what has been done elsewhere, and how that can impact on what you can do. It opens up discussions around potential opportunities and learning, and I think that's really important. The other thing is, every organization will have had wins in the past, however big or however small, around how it works with its data, how it manages it, how its IT operates, highlighting and those in your own mind, and then thinking, well, how would this apply on a wider scale? What could we do? What could we achieve? Bolstering that with examples from other places. So you make it real, but you bring it back to your own organization. It's a really, really useful thing to do. And, you know, if you're part of a wider community on this, and, you know, as the LG, we run networks in this kind of space, understanding the experiences of others, what they've actually been able to do, can really, really help bring information in, which then starts to inform that strategic set of decisions around what's actually going to be done, the tactical decisions about how to do it. So yeah, I mean, this is all about building digital dialogue, I think, at all different levels, inside and outside.
Yeah, I guess maybe then just expanding on that question, when we talk about the digital dialogue, in your eyes, what does a digitally prepared council look like under this new structure?
I guess it depends where an organization is in its timeline at this point, because, you know, as Sherrill said, there are different people at different stages, but what sort of things are vital? I mean, I noticed something in the chat popping up, and I don't want to kill off a question by accident, but I will mention it. But it's around, what is the leadership for digital within this? If you've got a scenario where you've got really unclear digital leadership, all people vying against each other for a particular job, that can be quite difficult. The organization needs to decide quite early on what the leadership is in this space for digital, and bring that authority, that ability to deliver, I would think, closer to that kind of board level, so it's integrated into that process. Within the digital data space, I mean, there's kind of a triad that's really important for me here, which is you've got your digital personnel, you've got your, let's call it operational IT. I know it goes wider than that, but you've got the personnel, and you've got data professionals. Those people within the organization, ultimately, when they're aligned and they can speak with a powerful voice for an information-led organization, deliver and execute some of that if enabled to do so, I think that's vital. And when you've got those kind of things in place, you start to get to a point where you can start to utilize your data, you've got your information in the organization, and that can help empower leadership to make some of the tough decisions that are potentially required during aggregation or disaggregation. Requires a lot of prep work. I mean, digitally, a council prepared for this really has to know, it goes back to the first question, what systems it's got, who owns them, where the data is, what the contracts are around that, what's the life cycle of these things. And then to be able to build a vision as to how to move from that based on where they are and where they want to be. I'd say if a council has the ability and the resource to top that up by proactive engagement with citizens as it moves forward with this process, and what should this look like, it's always going to be a good thing. But yeah, I mean, these things can be difficult because of existing arrangements. There has to be a vision for day one.
Yeah.
That has to take into account all the legalities, internal customer needs, etc. So things like single email, web and intranet start points, so it's easy to find stuff, elections committee systems, things like your financial management. There has to be a clear view for those, supported by that long-term vision of where are you going from this point. And having that vision up front and be able to move backwards, probably quite advantageous.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so much to think about. It's almost daunting to be like, where do we begin? How do we start? If I flip the question then backwards a little bit, what could happen if IT isn't aligned early? What could go wrong if we don't take the right actions right now? And Dave, Sherrill, either of you, what's the
well, at the end of the day, we're fundamental to the organization being able to operate. If we weren't operating, then the organization's going to really struggle. I mean, we'd be back to pen and paper and ringing up a phone number, but even that in itself would be difficult, the way that phone systems are different. So if we didn't have our networks operating, all of our systems running. So and I think it is about how you have that dialogue, as Dave said, with the leadership, so they understand that. How are you going to make sure that your citizens can communicate with this new organisation on day one, and have those conversations, and start understanding it, and start having those conversations as soon as possible, because we get taken for granted. Everybody just expects the network to be working, and they just expect that, they can switch on their laptop and it's all good and great, and they can get the communications in the way that they want them. But that's not going to happen with a new organisation unless it's been thought through about how that is actually going to work. And, I think that is around understanding what the options are, the possibilities, and having conversations with suppliers like yourselves. What can you do to support us in this space so that we can be day one ready, and actually what can we deliver on that day one, and how can we push ourselves to actually not just have the basics but might have something that's better than basic. What can we really do?
Completely.
I was so glad, Cheryl, then when you mentioned about phones being available, and then said actually maybe not, because I go out and I run business continuity exercise. Sometimes people think, oh, the phones will work. I'm like, was that on Microsoft Teams? Oh dear, that's probably not something you've got access to right now. I'm just picking that as an example. I mean, there's the sort of the big scale with things, but when we go out, I mean, as the LGA, we go out and we do peer reviews, and Cheryl kindly referred to one earlier. We talk to different councils about where they are in this process, and some of the challenges and experiences of that start to come out. You start to get some real life examples. When I spoke a little bit earlier about inventory, understanding what you've got, because you can't plan or manage what you don't actually know about. So one particular organization was talking around a parking contractor that they worked with, and they underwent quite a sizable network change. And the parking contractor was linked into the network, but the linkage wasn't very well known. So the network change happens, as will happen when we do all these different kind of organizational shifts, and suddenly none of the parking machines work. Which is a sort of small kind of sounding thing, but when you think about that for an impact, you've got an impact on the citizen, you've got confusion, you've got, are tickets going to be handed out now? Are they not? You've got legal challenges and claims, and also on top of all of that, the risk of reputational damage. So that whole thing around inventorying, understanding what you've got, is really, really so important, because at the end of this, every council wants to be there delivering good, reliable citizen services based around the most accurate data possible. And if you don't align your IT stuff right, it's not just the risk of not delivering certain things, and on day one, that's a real problem. It's a risk of delivering them really, really badly. At which point, if you think about this and you're trying to launch almost a new organization, or you're saying, as a citizen, we're going to work in a totally different way, if that looks like it's failing on day one, that sticks, and that's what you've got to avoid.
I couldn't agree with you more. Last question from me before I hand over to Georgina, maybe for a question. A little reminder to the audience, feel free to pop your questions to Dave, Sherrill, me or Georgina in the chat now, so we can address them in the last 10-15 minutes. My last question, and almost selfishly, is how can an intelligent network and automation help councils deliver more with fewer resources? I'll go to you, Dave, first.
Yeah, sure. Start from the absolute fundamental basics. The core expectation of a network is that it works. So, people connect to resources quickly and effectively. When you're making multiple changes of scale, you can put that at risk by choosing the wrong solutions. In some cases, I've seen organizations trying to choose multiple solutions and stick them together, because we all have our different likes in the tech space, or you just configure them incorrectly. So getting the design of a network that supports your needs now and your future needs as you come together, move apart, tied to sort of enterprise architectural decisions is vital. The networks themselves need to be intelligent to support that efficiency. You need to be able to ultimately to minimize the amount of work needed to keep them secure, the most basic level. Not going to get rid of risk, threat, and challenge, but the fundamentals need to be secure. That includes, managing who goes where ultimately, because you want to protect from harm. And they need to be providing good data to inform operations and operational staff. They need to be self-healing where possible. Network as well. If I go back X years, it was all about spaghetti, wasn't it? Fundamentally, it's this connects to this, goes to this patch room, this hub, this router. Realistically, we've now got hybrid. And, you know, the wrapper that we put around the concept of our network, really the network management technologies need to wrap around those hybrid estates so we can use the limited but skilled resources that we've got to continually improve and innovate way beyond keeping the lights on. And I suppose probably move more to the automation side, you know, what we were talking about earlier about things like getting data right, getting security right, about access to that data. That then allows you to leverage opportunities from some of the technologies that are out there now better, and to get staff empowered to work with things like low code, yeah, AI, to build more efficient approaches to what they do. You sort of end up repurposing some of your staff more towards innovation and delivery rather than just day-to-day delivery.
Yeah.
Get the chance to learn, experiment, move up that kind of knowledge pyramid, team-wise, organizational-wise, from data to information to knowledge. There's a lot of opportunities there if it's done well.
Correct. Yeah, I completely agree. Sherrill, your thoughts?
So I think Dave's covered off the technical side of the networking.
Yeah.
But for me, there's a big risk with pulling these organisations together. And it's something which in the council the last few years, we've been going through this cultural shift. And I'm going to call it the customer experience, but for me, it's the internal customers, not necessarily the external customers. So we're going to have different cultures that we bring together. We're going to have district and borough councils that, because of the size of them, the governance that they have to adhere to will be less, because their expenditure will be less. Within the county council, you know, the governance and decision making can be quite a slow process, because obviously we aggregate everything up and the spend levels therefore go up a level, and it can be really difficult to be agile and to be responsive. And the worst thing we could have is this new organisation where staff are coming into it and they're not getting that same response flexibility that they've been used to in their organizations. They're going to be fearful anyway, you know, as Dave alluded to. Change, nobody really likes change. Some of the faces that they're used to are no longer going to be there, because there will be some churn. There's bound to be, you know, some people will not want to wait and see. They'll vote with their feet. So we're going to have that whole cultural piece. So for me, that's where, if there's things we can do for the basics, getting the basics right, using the technology that we've got available to us, that can use automation, that can use artificial intelligence. So in the background, some of those basic things are just working for the end user, so that they don't see anything different, and they can just come into work and switch on their laptop and just crack on and do the job that they need to do.
Yeah.
And all of the, you know, the sort of infrastructure that sits behind that is happening. And if it can, you know, if there's AI that can support new colleagues into whatever the new digital service is going to look like, and it might be technology they've not used before, so they're feeling vulnerable, they're feeling scared. There's an AI tool there that can support them and help them to become familiar quite quickly and build their confidence. Then I think that's going to be essential, and we should just be looking for those opportunities where we can do that and support our colleagues, support each other through this process, and remember that it is people that are involved in this. And so yes, we want to make sure we can deliver our services to the citizens, but we also need to look after our staff.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's so interesting, because the reality is this, when it comes to network, you just expect it to work. So if you do have kind of an AI driven network in the background, even though the teams and it might not expect, you know, something to go wrong or for it to even be an issue, the fact that that in itself is seamless gives you a little bit more confidence in the change. I think I agree with both of you. From a Juniper perspective, we really want local government to feel empowered to meet their goals. You know, and that's why we've built a self-driving, self-healing network to begin with. I think the word AI can sometimes be a bit daunting because it's just kind of thrown around and it means lots of different things. But for us, it means it's been over 9, maybe 10 years now of teaching our AI what good looks like, what a good network looks like. And it's going to give you the power to understand when something goes wrong, if a user's having a bad experience, what the root cause is, and how to fix it. And so when you put day-to-day networking issues aside, that actually gives you the time to have meaningful citizen conversations. It gives you the time to have interactions with each other. It gives you the time to really carefully build this new version of a local council. And so that experience end to end from citizen to teams to what you deliver in the end can be so much more powerful when you're not putting out fires every day. Um, Thanks, guys. That's been really, really insightful. I believe Georgina has a question, so I'm going to hand over to Georgina now.
Thank you, Gersh. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dave. That's really insightful, especially during this time of uncertainty. And I think that's reflected in the questions that have been posted in the chat, is really understanding what those building blocks are. And Sherrill, I love the quote around keep informed, keep going. I think that's definitely a motto that we can take, not just for this, but in life too. But again, I have to ask a question as techUK, what can our members, and the wider supply community do to make sure, unification process is as easy as possible for council? Sherrill, I know you have touched on it as well, but yeah, if there was anything you wanted to add as well, and Dave, of course.
So I'll jump in and then Dave can come in after. So for me, this is something that I am very passionate about. And I know it's a really difficult conversation to be having with suppliers because, for them, especially if they're suppliers that have concentrated on the public sector market, they're about to see their customer base shrink. So that's difficult for them. So there's that. So there is going to be an element of they're going to need to, how are they going to keep their profitability, or we may even lose some through the process, not immediately, but longer term, because there's not as many customers out there. However, I would hope that our suppliers have got a conscience and that they do what they do for the public sector because it's for the greater good of our country. And that actually what we need is we need them to come together. We need them to support us. We need them to help us smooth out this process of aggregation or even disaggregation in some cases of how can we do that? How can we work with the suppliers to learn from them what they've done in other places to make this affordable, because there is going to be not a limitless, pocket full of money that can be spent on this. And so we really want to challenge suppliers to say, well, what are you going to do? Because we're trying to do this for the good of the country. So what are you going to do to step up and support us through this process? So that's just me on my little bit of a soapbox, because it is something that I do feel suppliers need to step up and work with us to make this as painless as possible, because there's real users out there, real citizens that are the most, needy in society, that need us to be delivering the services that we are delivering. And, we all need to have that social conscience. So Dave, I'm off my soapbox. I'll hand over to you.
I might just join you on the soapbox. I'm not sure. There's something back in the old land of retail, which was know your customer. And there's a depth to that I think we're exploring here to an extent. I mean, if I go back a few years, and it still does happen, a supplier will talk to a local government organisation and they'll start talking about the minister, the department, and they'll start talking about central government stuff. And you think, hold on, that's not us. Organisations engaging with local government need to understand local government and what it is. That's a fundamental as a starting point. But in the line of this, they also need to understand the changes that are going on, the pressures that are going on, the challenges that are going on in that space. And, that ultimately requires good understanding, good research, good relationship management. I mean, we provide support material for local government around LGR, that can be used to understand local government and the LGR challenges better by suppliers. So I'd encourage people to sort of do that basic research almost. But, as part of this process, there are going to be a level of budgetary constraint no matter what investment is involved. The pressures on councils need to be understood because there isn't this unlimited pot of money for change here. Ultimately, every investment has to be done wisely and carefully. And part of that from a supplier perspective, I think, is to make sure that the organizations you're dealing with, when you're looking at solutions for them, make sure it actually really does link back to the organization's needs, the organization's processes and opportunities, and the needs of the citizens that they have. It's very, very nice to have a really, let's say it, sexy piece of technology. Is it the most appropriate for that organization at that point in time? If you're talking to someone, get into the detail of what they're doing rather than what you're bringing to the table straight off.
Absolutely, Dave. And I think hopefully to reassure you as well, techUK are hosting a Selling into Local Gov webinar. We've got LGA involved in that as well. And Sherrill, to your point, absolutely right in terms of the role of suppliers. Again, with the LGA, we have a supplier briefing in terms of, what role they can play. So thank you. Before we go into the questions, Gersh, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think maybe overall, I think, yeah, that's completely right. You need to know who you're talking to when it comes to local government. Be prepared, be knowledgeable, read strategy documents, etc. published for a reason. Read them, go be prepared. And I know that's something we take a lot of time and care to do so. So yeah, I think both points, I think that's completely appropriate. Conscious of time, I think maybe we can take one question from the audience and then maybe just go into kind of key takeaways and where you can find everyone. What would you say to councils that that want to act but don't know where to start?
I think data collection. So even if you haven't got the permission from your leadership, when I say permission, even if wherever your council is on the journey at the moment, if they haven't set up a digital data and tech work stream like we have, then you can still, if you're in that position, start getting your technical teams to start collating that information. I think, as Dave said, it's that understand what you've got now, because you'd be amazed. We've got shadow IT, we've got systems that are procured and managed in service areas that I don't have oversight of centrally. Now, other councils might be much better than that, and they may have this central depository or repository already. We don't, so we had to pull that together, and that's something that I think you can do anyway, regardless of what other permissions you've got to act in this space. So getting that information, understanding what it is, who the contract owner is, what the contract end dates are, what your spend is, and who, what is that system doing, what does it do, and what would happen if you didn't have it. So I think those are all things that I think anybody can start doing right now, and I'd recommend that you do. Dave, you've probably got broader advice than that.
Well, I think that's really, really good advice on a starting point if you're really, really thinking, what do we do? Because I mean, with any kind of let's talk about sort of strategic approach here. Knowing where you are is a key element to knowing where you can actually go and influences where you want to be. So there's that. But I think, I mean, as the local government association for councils, we offer different forms of reviews in this space that can be really helpful, that bring peers into the organization. So we've done various things like digital 360 reviews, but we are starting to do LGR 360 reviews as well. Really to sort of come into organizations, bring peers in to really see, how information and knowledge can be shared to help set direction, to help influence the conversation in a positive way. Other sorts of things that are useful. So we're establishing an LGR DDAT network. And I noticed somewhere in the chat about 3 back, there's a few links that I shared earlier. But yeah, we're putting together an online LGR DDAT network, which I would really suggest people send off if they're in a council with some interest to actually join that. And we do have a Devolution hub on our website as well that has a whole load of useful stuff in there and various materials that are pertinent. But we're always, you know, from an LGA perspective, we're always happy to have conversations. I popped an email in the chat there as well. But yeah, start from knowing where you are, build that coalition, build that knowledge. Vital.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, both. If I'm to summarize what we've spoken about today, I would say number one, councils need visibility across organizations before you build a strategy. You need to have those open conversations about what you have and where you want to go. And this is a great time to be building those long-term strategies, even if you don't know what the outcome of LGR is going to be. I would say second is that you don't need to rip and replace what you have at the moment in any organization. You just need to get a clear understanding of what the organization has, where there's alignment, where things are stagnant, what good looks like, and then have conversations with vendors like Juniper, because the network is essentially one that you're going to live with for 5-10 years, if not longer. And really taking the time to evaluate what you have and what could grow with you is extremely important. From a Juniper perspective, we're really happy to offer kind of a clear pathway through the fog. So if any of today's conversation has sparked an idea or thoughts about the art of the possible, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've put my details on the screen again for you now. We can offer a demonstration, some consultation, after getting kind of a high level understanding of what your architect is and what your architecture is and your strategic goals are. We're open to providing some guidance and even introducing you to customers or simply having a chat. We're a friendly bunch, so come and have a conversation with us. So yeah, thank you again. I really appreciate the time taken out, Sherrill and Dave, and I'll hand over to Georgina for any closing remarks.
Thank you. No, again, just wanted to echo that and thank our fantastic speakers, Sherrill, Dave, Gersh, really for being so generous in your insights. And hopefully people will leave kind of inspired about the change. As we've said, you know, change can be scary, but hopefully this really is that opportunity to reset and have some of the conversations that maybe we have avoided before. So yeah, thank you all for all our attendees, and thank you Gersh and Juniper for putting this on today. I personally found it really insightful, so thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, now.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.